Okay, let's get started here. Again, just a note about image selection. Dynamic pose, these two certainly fit the bill, or really colorful, works well. Areas of light are better than areas of dark, unless your dark is very highlighted. And again, we want to make sure that the image size is at least 612 by 792, or the other way around. So again, you can click on an image that you want, hover over it, and in the bottom corner we'll be able to see. So I'm going to use this image of Janelle Monáe for my text portrait. I tried before this tutorial to mess around with this image, and it was going really well, and I wanted to see what it looked like when I applied the effect. And here's just a quick note again about image selection. While it looks like this text really pops here on her sleeve, when we blend it with the gray, you can see that it's not quite as strong, whereas the text on her shirt that's white really pops. So that's just a good reason, again, to select an image that has a nice range of contrast and brighter colors. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close both of these and open up the template that I've downloaded. So we're going to either select your name, inspirational words, vertical or horizontal, depending on which direction your picture goes. The image I'm picking is vertical, up and down. So I'm going to open this template, and as you can see here, it's set up so that we have the background set to black. This will come in handy later. Okay, so I'm going to begin by opening and placing the image that I've downloaded, and the picture I'm looking for here is Janelle Monáe Tux Points. So it's going to put that on as a separate layer right over top of my background. And if you look closely, you might see that my picture is just a little smaller than my background, and I can even do a little cropping. I'll be using keyboard shortcuts a lot to zoom in and out. That's Command or Control minus to zoom out, make it smaller, or hit the plus to make it larger. So when I use my move tool here, click on V, I've selected my picture. If you want to, you can stretch it a little bit, make it just a wee bit bigger. If you're finding that you have to stretch your picture a lot, then that's a red flag that the image is too small. The resolution's kind of cruddy on that. I want to get maybe her whole body in here, feet and all, so I'll just go ahead and apply that there. So the picture's just a little bit bigger than the background, but that's okay. I've got that formatted to an 8 by 10. Okay, so with the picture in place here, we're going to click on our lock. And I want to highlight this layer and click lock. Oops, I realized I'm cutting off just to the side here, but you would be able to see that there's a lock hidden there. Sorry about that bad cropping. I'm going to duplicate this layer, and you want to do this if your layer has any white in it at all. So I'm going to come up here to Layer, Duplicate Layer, and it's going to give me just an identical version of that. For this one, I want to, and I can go ahead and close the eyeball on my other one, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. So I'll go to Image Adjustments, Brightness Contrast, and I'm going to just make it less bright. And the reason for that is that I'm going to be typing with white text, and if you have areas that are bright white, you might want to make them a little bit darker. And I'm going to also go ahead and call this layer that I've just adjusted my working layer. So I'm going to double click on the name of this layer here, and I'm going to change this to be called working photo. I'm going to end up deleting this at the end, but it'll be the one right now that we use. And once you've changed that, go ahead and lock it too. So we have everything locked so far. All right, so now we get to the part where we're going to add some type, and we know that that involves using the type tool. But before we do, let's think about maybe the phrases that we want to use. Zoom in on your picture, because again, this goal is to really identify those separate areas and fill them with different phrases or words. So I noticed like her lapel of her jacket would be one place to add. Running down her arm would be another. Maybe this block here on her chest, or this little chunk here. Might be different ways that I break those down into separate little text areas. And I've made myself a Word doc that has some of the things I'd brainstormed, and I also then highlighted and put in caps some of the text that I thought I might want to use. So you can see that I'm pulling some lyrics from her song Tightrope. I might include her name on there. So let's just start with this line here, dance up on them haters. So I'm just going to copy that and bring that over here into Photopea. I'm going to use my type tool. And since we're doing this at 72 dpi, you won't need to make it quite as huge as we did the other time. So you might start around like 36 point font. We want to pick this color to be white. If it's not for you, you can, like if it shows up red, just come down here and click on the white little thumbnail, and that'll give you a pure white. Okay. And then this is where you'll choose your font. Now I know I had you pick some in Google Docs when we were doing our worksheet. There are actually many more and many more stylized versions here in Photopea. And we won't be able to import fonts like we would if we were using something like Photoshop. So give yourself a little skim through here to try to decide what font you want. I'd stay away from any ones that are too scripty and frilly if it's hard to read. Normally when you type it, it's going to be really impossible to read when we go to stretch it. And also we'll be typing in all caps. So a lot of times those cursive or script fonts don't translate as well when you're typing in all caps. I'd also stay away from any where it's a very maybe spread out font, or one in which it's just too much of a novelty font or too complex. We want these to be, you know, maybe a little more bold. So I'm going to select the one that I used on my example earlier, the day poster black. And the reason I like it, it has kind of a retro vibe to it that I think matches her classy style and fits in kind of with the theme that I want to evoke. So I'm going to pick day poster black, regular 36 white. All right, so then I'm ready to just click anywhere and type in my phrase, or in this case I can paste it because I copied it from my doc, and you can see that it brings it on here. And at 36 points, that's pretty big. That's going to be too big for any portion of this here. So I can again highlight over it. I can make this smaller somewhere in between. I might also do a little planning, so I'll do the same thing. Let's try to put dance up on them haters running down her arm here. So making it a little bit smaller would also be good. And also with this bend, I want to treat those as two separate planes. It'll be easier if I have my text all going one direction. So I might have dance up on them haters broken down into maybe let's try just getting rid of haters here. Okay, and when you have it kind of the size you want, we're not worried about placement. We can always make it smaller. I'm going to go ahead and hit check. Now you'll notice that it put my text on its own separate layer. Right from the start, what you want to do is under layer, go to rasterize. So that's going to turn your text into pixels like a picture. So now it's going to not be editable. Like if I realize I misspelled something, I can't get back in there and change it at this point. That's why copy pasting from a spell check doc would be a good idea. But it does treat it like a picture that we can adjust. So click your V on your keyboard. That's your move tool. And then you can rotate it if you need to. Kind of bring it down into position. We can squish it. And let's see if I can kind of get this to somewhat fit in this area here between her lapel and sleeve. And when you're stretching this here, you want to stretch it to be just a little bit bigger than the area that you're hoping to cover. So I'm going to begin by just doing some simple distortions, and you can see that that's a little bit bigger than my area there. I can hit check on that and have that looking like so. Let me show you the two other ways that we can adjust this image. If we go to edit, transform, we are going to make common use of warp and distort. And let me show you the difference between these two. So distort lets me grab a corner and see how it moves it like perspective. So when I'm distorting this, it's kind of treating this like a string and pulling everything together with it. So this actually would work pretty well to get this sized up here for this. So let me just go ahead and hit check on that one. If I were to distort, if I were to warp it instead, then it's going to give me more points and be a little more malleable. I'll get to that in just a second. All right, so you're probably thinking, Ms. Gross, that's close, but you know, no cigar. It's looking a little rough there. You also notice that it looks a little pixely. Again, I'm zoomed in and we're working at only 72 pixels per inch to keep these fast for you. The other tool that we're going to make good use of is the Liquify tool. It's under filters and you can find it there a few down, Liquify. And it might take just a second for it to load, or if you didn't hit it like I did, maybe hit Liquify. Okay, so I definitely clicked at that time. Maybe it's just being slow. Sometimes Photopea's a little slow. Oh, I need to make sure my layer's selected. It's not Photopea's fault. It was my fault. I didn't tell it which layer I wanted to work with. Okay, now if you just see the text and a checkerboard, then you need to click the background. Okay, and we've got some different tools in here. I'm going to make this all a little bit smaller so you can see my whole screen here. First off, we want to zoom in so that we can really see the area that we're going to manipulate. And the hand tool lets you move around. So I want to just get that so I can really see what I'm doing there on the screen. So zoom in, zoom out, move it around. And then we'll probably just make use of the smudge tool for the most part. And if we click on it and bring our cursor over, you can see that it gives me like a round circle, like a paintbrush. I can make this smaller or bigger using my bracket key. So next to your keyboard, by the letter P, you'll see that there are brackets. So there's a left bracket and a right bracket, hard bracket and fancy bracket. We want the square brackets here. So if I click the one right next to the P that looks more like the letter C, you can see that each click makes that smaller. If I click the other bracket, there closer to the slash button, it makes it bigger. So that's a great keyboard shortcut for making our image or our brush smaller. And that's also true with any other paintbrushes you use. Okay, so one thing I want to do is I want to kind of smush this D down a little bit. So you can see that as I'm doing this, it's kind of pulling that along with it. And depending on the size of my brush, it might take a few strokes there, but there I've got that D kind of pushed down. And it'll take a little practice, but my goal is to align the text with the perimeter of her jacket here. So I'm going to just kind of follow along these contours. And again, I'm under Filter, Liquify. And if I want to like bring that up a little bit, I can. Notice how it makes it kind of wavy. If you do, you can undo. I might make my brush a little smaller to get in here and just get that little tip of the N. Bring these down. So you can see that it's going to take a little finessing on each word to get it set in just right. And again, it's a little better to go over the shape than to be short of it, to go too small. And same over here, I can again adjust the shapes of these letters on this side of her jacket to bring it in a little bit so that they really are matching those contours. And again, this is why having your picture in the photo in a darker shade might help, because the white text can be kind of tricky to see there. Okay, so getting close there. And I might even try to kind of cut that off so I'm not cutting into her jacket so much. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I might see if I can get that M to bump in just a little bit. And is it still legible? Yeah, I think it is. Okay, so then, woo, you can also really zoom in and zoom out. And I collapsed it here, but if I click on the menu, you can see your thing. And when you're done, hit OK. All right, so again, I'll use Command or Control minus to, move out. Reset. Oh, did it just shift on me? It sure did. Let's step backwards. Remember, that's always an option. Edit, step backwards, or Command Z, Control Z. Okay, so I'm going to do Command minus to get this back out of here. Let me make that a little bit bigger. All right, so that's the basic idea. I promised you that I'd show you though the distort the warp. So let's try that and let's finish this sleeve. So dance up on them haters. So I'm gonna add my text here. And again, I'm typing in all caps. If you have a caps lock, you can do that. Or if you're copy pasting, make sure you're bringing it in from an all caps doc. All right, so I'm gonna hit check. That looks good. Who remembers what I'm gonna do next? Layer, rasterize. So now it's a picture. Hit V on my keyboard, which activates the move tool. So I can think about moving this down into position. And you're probably wondering, like, Miss Gross, that's upside down. But again, I'm thinking about following the path of my previous text there. So like it's all one phrase that's sort of wrapping around here. Okay, so again, I'll get it kind of sized up close. And once I like it, I can hit the check. And this time, let's see what edit, transform, warp does for it. So you'll notice that it has more squares on it here. So these are more points where we can manipulate the shape. So I can pull these. Now you'll notice that it looks like they have kind of handles tethered to each of the previous ones. So I can push those in that way. I can slide that over. So the warp gives you many more contact points, and it can also help you kind of get your picture stretched in perhaps a little bit before you have to do much with the Liquify. Sorry, I was concentrating there, trying to think about getting this. And again, it's going to be a little bit better to go slightly larger. I notice here that when I zoom in, this A isn't quite down to that edge. So I want to, again, edit, transform, warp, see if I can't move some of these points to help pull that out a little bit. We'll give it a little space. But that's looking pretty close. And you might even be able to manipulate it enough from here that you don't even have to use the Liquify tool. And for this part, it's looking actually pretty good. So I think I'm gonna call that. All right, so now you notice that we're getting some text layers, and each one is relevant to our type. You're going to end up with a bunch of these. So one thing you can do to keep yourself organized is to add a folder. And we could put both of these maybe into a folder called sleeve, or I might make a folder that's just called jacket. So if I make a folder here by clicking on the icon at the bottom, it looks like a folder, I can call this jacket, and I can put each of these things inside of that folder. So see how it kind of shifted it to the side. So now when I look at jacket, I can collapse that. I can still come to these individual layers and work on them, or I can hide the whole thing, but that'll be a great way to keep yourself organized. So you could even start that way by making some different folders for yourself and then working within those. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for now. That's been long enough.